All right, hello everybody. Welcome back. Today is a day where a bunch of stuff is going to be coming together. We're going to finally be transitioning from the ideas that we have and the data that we're starting to look at into being able to put this in writing and really present all the stuff that we've accumulated into a research paper, which is sort of the end goal of this class. Now, obviously, we're not just going to take everything that we have and throw it together really quickly. It's not the goal for this particular week. It's going to be a 2 week process where we're maybe cleaning up some stuff from the past and turning our attention to this next step. By the time we're done with these next 2 weeks, my hope is that you are going to have the skeleton framework for that final paper that you're going to be writing. To kind of get us started on that today, what we're going to be doing is just walking through what an APA formatted paper looks like. And to do that, we're going to revisit our old website that we saw last time, the one from Purdue University. But this time, instead of looking at just the references and the citations that we looked at last time, what we're going to be doing is looking at sorry, something doing something. All right, what we're going to be doing this time is looking at the overall paper structure, how we should set it up, and how we should discuss our topic in proper APA format. Now, if you've had this class before, had a class that's covered APA formatting before, I guess is what I should say, and you probably were already exposed to the seventh edition APA formatting idea. But if it's been a while since you've had this class or you didn't get introduced to APA formatting, I want to make you aware that this specific process is very precise, that there's a need to make sure that everything's organized in an exact way and presented in an exact manner. And part of that is to ensure that the reader can understand exactly what you're covering and where to look for specific stuff. I think also a part of it's just to ensure that we kind of have a universal language that we're using when we're communicating ideas. Sort of an extra step to take when you've gone through the research process. Now, let's first of all, I guess, look at the basic APA website that goes over what's expected in general in an APA formatted paper. And if you go to the website that I'll have linked up on our class website, you'll see a description of the seventh edition. You can see links to different things that you're going to need to include. And even one, if you've taken this class, before, or I guess again, a class similar to this before and use the sixth edition, you can kind of recognize some of the changes from the sixth edition to the seventh edition by clicking on this link that you see again on the web page that I'll be providing for the class. But looking at the general requirements for APA formatting in the seventh edition, what you're going to see is a lot of similar stuff from previous APA editions and stuff that you might have already started using in other papers. Now, if you scroll down after you look at the overview of what's presented, you'll see something I want you to pay attention to. What you see here is a description of a student APA title page. This would be more for different papers that you're going to write in for social psychology or your clinical psych class, where it's just exploring an idea, an assignment that you've been given by your instructor. And it's not necessarily focusing in on you conducting research. Since it is not just a basic class paper, what you're actually going to be referencing throughout this particular process is what's called the professional paper, APA formatted style. And there's subtle differences between the two of them, but to include all the required components to your paper for this class, you do need to use this specific formatting. So I really want you to take note of that, that if you look up APA formatting, you'll see two fundamentally different ways of presenting information. This is for your typical papers. This is for your research-based papers, and this is going to be the one that we're using in this particular assignment, and you'll be using for that senior thesis as well. You might, if you just eyeball it very quickly, notice one of the big differences between the two of them. In title pages, which describe the general gist of what it is you're going to be doing and where you're coming from, you see on the APA formatted professional paper an extra component to what's called the header. This is essentially the first couple big words without the words the or of or it in it, um, where you can get a sense of what the paper's title is, and this carries over in this header to each, oh, it's not here, each subsequent page that you'll be using. I'll show you that in just a second. The other thing that you're going to see on this header, which is the same thing as for a typical paper, is the page number listed here. If you're not very familiar with formatting headers and how to do it, look at this a little early. Make sure you go to your Microsoft Word or Microsoft Word equivalent program so you can figure out how to add specific page numbers to the top. You don't want to put a 1 at the top of page 1 and a 2 at the top of page 3. It doesn't work that way. You have to have something indicating that this is specific spot on the right-hand side, this being on the left-hand side, this spot with a number on the right-hand side has the page number on it. It's kind of an indication that you can add. Another big difference that you can probably notice is that even though the titles are exactly the same, underneath the titles are two completely different things. And this is again for a class, so you're going to get information like the professor's name, the class within the person's taking. It's not what you're doing for this particular component when you're writing, again, these professional papers. You don't have a professor when you're doing your research. You are your own researcher, your own author for these, so there's really no place to put a professor and class number in it. Technically, yes, this is for our class, but again, we're gearing up for doing our own research paper where you won't have a professor or a class that you're going to attribute this stuff to. So what you're going to do instead of having all that extra information is have your name or the name of multiple authors on this paper, where this is coming from. In this particular case, it's Cal State East Bay. And what you're going to be doing within it is including just basic components of, well, I guess, where it's coming from. So I don't think you actually need the Purdue Online Writing Lab because that's not a lab that you're actually in. So really all you need is the Department of Psychology from Cal State East Bay. You also might potentially, if you've got other publications or other things that you want to include, add author's notes, but my guess is that this is not going to be a part of your paper. This is more for correspondence. If you're looking to kind of get published in a major journal, it's not one of the things that necessarily needs to be included in this paper that we're doing. But I want you to kind of catch that this is a potential thing that differentiates these papers from, again, typical student papers that you have. After you get past that title page, which can be a process in its own, then the rest of the paper starts to unfold in, again, a slightly different way. So with a research paper, you do include something called an abstract. This is about 250 words that gets at the gist of your study. It will not only talk about the ideas, but also the research data that you collected, the results that you have, and the conclusions that you can draw from it. And at the bottom, you'll have this thing called a keywords area where you can include key topics, key terms that people might be looking for when trying to find articles relating to what your work actually looked at. This particular abstract has some different components to it that you can read about when you look at this link if you're not familiar with it. It is supposed to be found in your research articles right after the title page. Once you've done that, and then there starts to be a lot of similarity between the typical paper and these research-based papers. There's a couple extra sections that you're going to have in these professional papers that you're going to writing, which is why I'm also going to be including a link to sample papers in this APA 7th edition. You can see on the top a sample paper for a traditional student paper. Again, this is not the one that we're going to be doing this semester. And right below it, if you scroll down, you can see a sample paper for the professional paper that we will be using for this particular class. And if you scroll through this, what you'll see, it's not letting me scroll through it as easily, is all of the different formatting requirements, some notes on how to title things, where to put things, is it centered, is it left justified, what's the margins in it. All of that stuff is included within this the sample paper. So hopefully, as you're writing your paper, you can continue to reference it and make sure that you're formatting for everything, not just the citations and the references, but everything is matching up with APA formatting. What I would strongly suggest doing over the next 2 weeks, it's not necessarily writing the entire paper. We're going to get to that, but creating a skeleton for the paper. So laying out your sections. What am I going to have as my title? What is the header for each page? What am I going to have as my name and coming from? What's my abstract going to look like? Maybe don't write the entire thing, but at least get to it. What are the keywords I'm going to have? And then how am I going to break up each of the different sections for my paper? Getting into the introduction, the methods, the results, and the conclusion sections that you usually have for this. And if you can, you've been doing your research, you could also get that reference page together. This is a big, big part of the paper, these references that you're going to be using in your description of what you're looking at in the introduction, probably tying into some methods topics, and looking at again when you get to your discussion section in the end of your paper. If you've been doing the same topic or looking at the same topic throughout, you probably already have over half the references that you'll probably need for this paper. You might need to go grab a couple more just to round things out and give some explanation to what it is you're looking at. But if you've changed your topic, which over half the class I think has at some point now, you might have to go back to the drawing board on getting these resources. You might have to find some new references, some new articles to use when you start to describe what it is that you're looking at. And as you can see here in this example paper, references can come in a lot of different forms depending on the source that you're looking at. You could be looking at a chapter, you could be looking at a book, you could be looking at a journal article or some website. An APA has a very specific format for each of these different mediums of information. So you want to make sure that you're looking at exactly how you're supposed to write out these references. And then you want to reference as you look at this paper, if you're wanting to try to understand how to do everything perfectly, how these things are cited as well. How do they describe the authors? How do they talk about it when they're quoting? All of that is intentionally included within this sample paper so you can see what it is you should be doing as you start to populate this paper moving forward. It's not necessarily critical that you do that now. It's more just getting the structure up and getting everything designed. But if you get that taken care of, life will be significantly easier as you progress onto the paper side and start really integrating all the stuff that you've accumulated into a full paper that's going to probably be, for most of you, somewhere between 10 to 15 pages long. Double spaced, don't freak out, but you probably should expect to have something about that length if you're getting to every single thing that relates to your idea and really presenting what would look like a senior thesis paper, even if it's from this particular case, made up data that we've given you or I've given you. That's pretty much the entirety of what I want to cover in this particular week, just giving you familiarity with APA formatting. Hopefully, for some of you, it's just a review and kind of it's a push to go on to the next step. For some of you, if this is brand new, you're not really familiar with the APA formatting idea, really dig through this website. Make sure you understand exactly what's expected of you when you're doing this. And then, as you can see, pretty soon, in about 2 weeks, We're going to have you turn in a skeleton paper that goes over the details of what you're going to be looking at and kind of organizes each individual section out so you're ready to build on it, populate it in the next portion of this class. That's it for today, though. As always, please do feel free to email me to set up an appointment or just ask questions via email. Hopefully, we can continue moving forward and everybody can start doing more than looking at their data and really trying to kind of tie it to the context of what it is they're interested in studying. Wish you all well, and I guess I'll be seeing you all pretty soon. Take care, everybody.